Hi Casper, how you doing, buddy? So we're doing another Croctalk podcast with Casper here, and this one we're going to talk about the importance of alligators. Why do we need them? Why should we care about them? Which I've had quite a few people ask, both because they want to hear like interesting, like why are they so important in the environment? But I've also had quite a few people ask like, why do we need these things around? Why can't we just kill them off? Why should we care about them? So this is a pretty good topic to talk about, right? So because alligators and crocodiles too, but we're going to focus just on alligators for this video. But alligators in Florida are a keystone species, and a keystone species is a species that other species rely upon for survival. So keystone is where if you are building an arch out of stones, like you have stones like this, and in the middle one, you have one that if you pull it out, the whole thing collapses. That's what a keystone species is. So alligators are a keystone species, and they provide many different services for the ecosystem. And so some of those services are, for one, as an apex predator, they're going to help keep other species in line by consuming them and controlling the populations and behavior of prey species by eating some of them, right? So that's why all apex predators are keystone species, depending to what degree. There's varying degrees of how important they might be in that ecosystem and how detrimental their loss would be to each different ecosystem, depending on what kind of species we're talking about. But on that note, let's just go ahead and say all species are important, okay? All of them matter. Not to be a speciesist here, but some of them do obviously matter more depending on if they are removed from the ecosystem, how much it would affect the ecosystem. And so that's why we can create some sort of hierarchy on what species are more important to preserve than others. But along those lines, they all deserve protection. They all deserve respect. I'm a big advocate on this, guys. Outside of the cut and dry, what is your purpose? All life deserves protection, in my opinion. Like we shouldn't just think like, oh, well, this one does this, or this one does that, so we should protect it more than this one. What does this one offer us as humans? Not much. Kill them off. No, we should respect all life. All life deserves protection and respect, and I'm really big on that. I really upsets me to hear how some people will justify the death or torture or inhumane treatment of one animal over another because it's less important, as if it now suddenly doesn't feel pain, or because you may not understand its importance yet. We're learning all the time. We do not have things figured out. Humans do not know everything. And when we try to dictate and say like, oh, well, this one's less important, so it's okay to kill them. How do you know? You don't know everything. You don't know. Maybe that animal has some interconnectedness in its environment that we're not going to find out for another 20 years because it's going to upset the ecosystem in subtle ways that may create cracks that cause it to crumble over time. There can be a lot of different things going on there. So I really hate this. It's hubris. It's the arrogance to think that we know everything, and so we can justify who lives and who dies because of it. And we've done that throughout history to other animals and to other people. This is another thing too, that like the way that people will talk about animals and be like, they're not important. We can kill them off because they're not important. Really, because they said that about certain groups of people throughout time. Or, oh, well, they're lesser than us. They're dumber than us. They don't feel pain like us. And so we can justify mistreating them. Again, they said the exact same thing about different groups of humans throughout time. So, this sort of stuff, like, it's really sad and really upsetting. And that's why I'm a big advocate that we should value all life, the best that we can. Now, not to go down this tangent too far, but I've been vegetarian for 10 years because of that reason. That's one of the things, all life deserves respect, and we shouldn't cause undue suffering if we can make a choice to, right? But that's another topic another time if you guys want to hear about my whole being vegetarian, all that kind of stuff, right? But that's a peacock, by the way, screaming off in the background. But anyways, back to these guys. What does make alligators important in the environment? So again, there's a lot. So being an apex predator, super important, keeps prey population in check. That protects the health of the ecosystem as a whole. If prey populations go unchecked, that's what you can have with like when wolves were killed off, deer population skyrockets, deer eat everything, entire deer population crash because of that. It leads to all kinds of unintended consequences. And so just keep in mind that the ecosystem is connected as a web. When you take one part out, it can cause the whole thing to fall apart, or cause cracks that can cause all kinds of issues too. So that's important right there. But alligator specific, what do they do? So a really cool one that they do is called a gator hole. And so a gator hole is where an alligator will start to wallow out an area. In Florida, we get a wet and a dry season. And so in many equatorial zones, actually, or near equatorial zones, we'll get this wet, dry season instead of like a very pronounced winter, summer as far as temperature goes. Instead, we have a very pronounced wet season, dry season. And so in the dry season, when it dries down out here, a lot of the animals have nowhere to go, and the gators will be in the last remaining puddle. And so in that puddle, they'll start to dig down and try to dig it out to get more water in there. And then over time, they can dig it out and make an entire pond. And so some gator holes have been used for generations, for centuries of alligators digging in the same gator hole. And this can create over time an actual pond that retains water through the dry season. And this will become an oasis for the surrounding wildlife to be able to utilize. And so even though, of course, you know, the gator here, he's going to take his taxes, okay? And what I mean by that, he's going to eat some of the animals in there, yes. So he takes his taxes, right? But in the grand scheme of it, he's saving thousands of animals from dehydration death because they can come in and get a drink. Now, every once in a while, somebody gets nabbed and eaten. Yeah, it happens. But as a group, everybody gets to live because of it. And so these gator holes become incredibly important for the ecosystem. And it's so cool when you find them out in the Everglades and you're like, wow, like this is like a legit gator hole that they've been carving out, and the other animals can now survive and drink out of this, and aquatic animals will live in there. And so I've seen it where you'll have sometimes you'll have like dozens of alligators in one little hole like that, and they're all in there surviving with fish and turtles and other animals, and birds come to drink. And yeah, it's really, really cool. So that gator hole thing is really important for the ecosystem, and or they're often described as ecosystem engineers because of that. So not only is that a place to drink, but over time, the vegetation will shift because of that water retention. And then over many, many years, then you have entire trees, and then you have what's called a hammock that can grow. So a gator can start his gator hole out there in the sawgrass in like a basically featureless landscape. It's like a monoculture of just sawgrass across certain parts of the Everglades, okay? Everglades is really diverse with plant life depending where you are, but in some areas, it just seems like featureless sawgrass forever. And so if he starts his gator hole in one of those spots, and then over time, that difference in the depth of the water can encourage things like cypress to start growing. And then cypress starts growing in there. And then, you know, the cypress roots come up through there, and then they capture more mud and nutrients and things like that and debris. And then maybe an oak tree starts to grow in there. And the next thing we know, we have a whole hammock with like hundreds of species of trees and animals that can grow around this central point of the gator hole. And it's just so cool how this whole thing can be built and started just by the alligator, creating an entire area that is now going to house hundreds or thousands of animals over time. So that's really, really cool and awesome. And again, ecosystem engineers, Keystone Species, really, really important in the environment, right? So just awesome. I love alligators. And there's more to it than just that, but I think that covers a lot for this video at least. And, you know, we're already going on like 8 minutes here, and I've had a couple people tell me I should make these shorter. I'm making them too long, so we'll cut it off there. There's more services that alligators can offer to the Everglades and other, outside the Everglades too, of course, but those are just some really, really good ones right there, you know, to cover. But anyways, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you have any questions, what other topics should we talk about on these little Croc Talks with Casper. And as always, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you guys on the next one.